Albert Breer is here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Albert?
Good. I'm good, Rich. How you doing?
I'm good. I just thought, like, what happened? You were ready to join us.
I have bad phone right now. I say that's what happened.
Okay, so we're going to cross our fingers that the next 10 minutes on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line goes just fine with you. So let's get right down to it. Is DK Metcalf holding out on the Seahawks, best you can tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think like this is sort of indicative of the way this is going across the league and has gone across the league. And if you notice, Rich, a lot more players are grousing about their contracts in the spring than we used to see. And the reason why is because it's very, very difficult now to stage a holdout in the summer. And so in a lot of cases, if you wait till the end of July, it's too late because the rules in the new CBA are so restrictive and so punitive. I mean, if you don't show up for the first day of training camp, like you lose the year towards free agency. So if DK Metcalf held a one-day holdout in training camp, then he would not be an unrestricted free agent next year. And so, for a lot of these guys, it's sort of the spring is the time to make your point. And, in a case of a player like DK Metcalf, given what's happened with the receiver market, you can certainly see where maybe, making a $100,000 investment, which is what it would be to miss all 3 days of minicamp, in making a statement about what you want and what you're looking for from the team when, other receivers across the league are getting paid $23, $24, $25 million a year. You can see where that might be worth it, if you're kind of doing the calculus in your head.
So then why wouldn't Seattle pay him? What's the you know what I mean? I know it's easy for us to say pay the man. You got Deebo Samuel up there in San Francisco. These things take time. I understand, but I'm kind of mystified because with Deebo, it's kind of straight up, right? Where he is such an important part of this team that can win the Super Bowl right now. And that's why a lot of people think Trey Lance shouldn't be the quarterback because he's not, quote unquote, ready for that. But at least you understand that this is a team that's not being retooled, remade. They didn't just trade away their Super Bowl winning franchise quarterback of the last decade, who is a pillar of the franchise. DK could be an indication of where Seattle's going,
right,
with their roster and their plans and long-term plans and things like that. So what is the crux of all of it?
Well, they want to keep him. And look,
Okay.
like Rich, like I think if they had wanted to move him, if they had said, like, okay, like we are really tearing this thing down to the studs and we're going to start over, they would have traded him by now. It doesn't mean that they can't still turn around and decide to do that in a month or two. But, if that was the plan from the start, the time to do it would have been when teams had their draft picks, when all the cap space across the league was available to extend him if other teams wanted to bring him in and extend him.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the Seahawks plan from the start had been like, let's blow this thing up and start over, and we can't afford to pay a receiver $24, $25 million a year, well, the time to do that would have been in March. And John Schneider, has been doing this for long enough, knows better than you and I, that, it wouldn't have been worth it to wait on a number of different fronts. I think this is just a matter of the receiver market changing and, what the Seahawks probably had budgeted for him and now those numbers changing. And I think we've seen, at different positions, of course, how things have changed and how thresholds have been broken. You see it at quarterback with, before this offseason, I think there were 3 quarterbacks making over $40 million a year. That number is now 6. And the same sort of things happened at receiver and on multiple different levels, too. You've got Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, at the top of the market. And then you look at, the next level, well, Christian Kirk got $18 million, so there's no excuse not to pay a player like this well over $20 million a year. So, I think part of it's like sort of recalibrating where you're at, and recalibrating for where the market is. And I would assume DK's people and Seattle are going to try to work to get something done before the start of training camp. But, you could definitely see where when you look at the numbers, that the amount of money that's going to be that's on the line here, why somebody like DK Metcalf would say it's worth $100,000 investment to make a statement here, make my point, and let the team know where I stand. So I don't have to do it when it could be really damaging to me in the summer.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what is the scoop up in San Francisco with Debo and Lance? I keep saying over and over again.
Yeah.
Week 1, it's Lance's team. Jimmy G was told, don't even show. You're excused from showing. I mean, and it's not like his presence there would be, so acrimonious if he showed, but there's a reason why they tell him not to show is because it's Lance's gig, right? It's Lance's gig. You tell me otherwise, and I'll start backing off this thing.
No. It is. And look, like my understanding is, like Jimmy Garoppolo's people, like if there's a trade suitor out there for him, like I think the green light's there for Jimmy Garoppolo's people to negotiate the financials on it. Because obviously with $24.5 million due to him, that could be an issue. So. I mean, everything the Niners have done, both behind the scenes and then publicly over the last 3 or 4 months, has indicated, like we're moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. And, I think that's been signaled to Jimmy in several different ways as well. Now when it comes to the question of whether or not Lance is ready, that's a different question, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch where this goes. I would say there was a fair amount of retooling that had to happen mechanically with Lance because he's not the most natural thrower of the football. So the Niners had to work with him on a bunch of different stuff and sort of rebuild some stuff in his game. And as a result, there were some ups and downs last year. It wasn't like a straight ascension, Like he came in and had a great first 10 days of training camp, then he dipped a little bit. Then he kind of slumped, then he came back and bounced back after, he had a really, I would say, mediocre performance in his first start. I think that was in week 5. And so there's been ups and downs, no question about it. But, I think that there's optimism that they can build an offense for him. The question is whether or not it's the Kyle Shanahan offense that we've seen the last few years. And my sense is where they are right now in when we get to week 1, I don't think it's going to be the full Kyle Shanahan offense. I think it's going to be some hybrid offense that's built to get Trey Lance going a little bit. And, that's fine. I think that's sort of kind of where he is developmentally. We knew he was raw coming out of North Dakota State. And, of course, Kyle's been down this road before. I mean, it's sort of what he had to do in Washington for Robert Griffin about a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if Lance gets the throws down? I mean, because you could basically say that, all due respect, they were running a limited Shanahan offense with Garoppolo too. I mean,
right.
Like there were throws that I'm sure Shanahan would love to have in his offense that Garoppolo couldn't make, and Garoppolo had so many problems throwing over the middle and between the hashes. My goodness gracious! And so
he freelanced more than Kyle would like to. I mean, I can tell you that for a fact. Jimmy did a lot of great things, but they definitely. I mean, there's part of this. Part of the reason why. Part of the reason why they traded up and they went and got Trey Lance is because they wanted to raise the ceiling at the position. And look, like Kyle's had quarterbacks that are pretty good, not great before, and he's been beaten on the biggest stage by great quarterbacks. I mean, think about his own experience, and I know that this really has affected their decision making at that position. In the Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator of the Falcons, Kyle coached his ass off for 2.5 quarters, and Tom Brady made it not matter. A few years later, he's the head coach of the Niners. They're in the Super Bowl, and the Niners outcoach, out everything the Chiefs for 3.5 quarters, and Patrick Mahomes makes it not matter. So, a big piece of this was raising the ceiling at the position. And sometimes to raise the ceiling at the position, you maybe have to take on somebody who has a little ways to go, which is sort of the logic that they used in taking Trey Lance where they did at 3rd overall.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's spend a couple of minutes here on the defending world champs. I had Les Snead on yesterday. So rare to see a contract given to a player that doesn't add any years at all. It just adds money, right? But Aaron Donald's a unicorn, so that makes sense. Check that box. Had Les on here, and he mentioned multiple times the phrase about the window that we have is what he said. And then when I asked him about the specifics on that, he said Matthew Stafford is the key to the window anyway. When you have somebody like Matthew Stafford, you can't put a time frame on a window. But you have receipts that I'm sure Les didn't really want to mention on the air. What do you think that window is for the Rams based on the cap and all of what they've built with very expensive players worth the money, though? What do you got?
Yeah. I mean, like they're sort of built the way the Indianapolis Colts were built, if you remember. And there's a reason why, like those Colts teams with Peyton Manning fell apart the way that they did at the end when Manning got hurt. You know, you had all these guys that they were deeply invested in that they just sort of all hit a wall at once. You know what I mean? Like, so they're built in that fashion. And, you know, I think that there's certainly the potential out there that a bunch of these guys get old at once and, oh, my God, what are the Rams going to do? And they have to eat it for a year or two. But I'm with Les on this. It's worth it. You know, if you have one Lombardi already, it's already been worth it. And you probably have a chance to compete with this core for another couple of years. You know, and Stafford's the main piece of it, and he's signed for the next, 4 years. Now, he's had his injury issues, so there's no question that, to some degree you're monitoring that. And maybe he's not a guy that plays into his 40s the way Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady have, but he's the number one piece. You also got to think about the fact that Aaron Donald's 31, Cooper Kupp's getting older, Jalen Ramsey's not going to be young forever. And so what I mean when I'm comparing it to the Colts is like when you're really reliant and over leveraged with a smaller group of players, and you're relying on your ability to find talent to kind of fill roles around them. The picture looks a lot different when that core starts to age and decline. And so, I think it's not just Matthew; it's a number of different players there that they've really built the team around. And one example of it is Andrew Whitworth. That's already taken a big piece out of the puzzle. So, that exists, no question about it. But I think everybody in that building would tell you that party they were able to throw in February made it all worth it. And anything they get from here, as far as the plan goes, is icing on the cake.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's jump into Deshaun Watson. What's going on in that Browns building right now? I mean, they have to be shaken by the 24th lawsuit that led to Watson's own attorney saying we got to look into this, as opposed to never could have happened in a million years with a behavior like that sort of thing. Jenny Vrentis' story, I mentioned earlier that the behavior that is laid out there can be termed as predatory. There's just no other way to put it when you read that sort of thing. He has every right to defend himself in this country, and there's a court of public opinion. He is losing in that court right now, getting routed, and he's got to show up for work next week. What is happening, Albert, right now?
So I think I'm going to give you one of the keys, and I don't have the answer to this question.
Okay.
How transparent has Deshaun Watson been with the Browns? How transparent has Deshaun Watson been with the NFL? That's, I think, an operative question here. I think it's a really, really important question. And we've seen the NFL come down harder on players in the past that weren't transparent with them. And they've always felt like they have to do that in large part because they don't have subpoena power, right? So they have to sort of set the example that if you don't cooperate with us, it's going to be worse on you. It helps them investigate future cases. So, looking forward at this, and look, the accusations are awful, and I think that goes without saying, and I don't want to trivialize any of that. But just, talking about this from a functional standpoint, what was in Jenny's report in the Times yesterday, and then what was in the 24th lawsuit, how transparent was Deshaun Watson with the Browns, with the NFL about what was coming? Because I think that could affect where this goes. I don't think we're going to get word on a punishment tomorrow. I know the NFL's feeling was maybe the best course of action was to wait until the period for pretrial discovery ends, and that ends on June 30th. So their feeling was it's important to let any information that's going to come out before we make a final decision, and it doesn't really matter whether or not we make a decision before June 30th. It won't materially affect anything anyway. But I don't know, Rich. Do you think that maybe the league feels the heat now? That they have to do something? I think that I think the feeling with the people in the Browns in the league up until now has been that they were going to get a decision on discipline right before training camp. But the public pressure that's on the league and the Browns now, and then I think however transparent Deshaun Watson was with the Browns and with the league, could certainly affect, the timeline and how this goes over the next few weeks.
I mean, is he not available for questioning next week, you don't think? I mean, it's mandatory minicamp. Every quarterback speaks. We've got Aaron Rodgers in front of his locker that we're going to be playing on. I mean, that's part and parcel. When you are the starting quarterback and certainly one of the most well-paid quarterbacks in the history of the league, I mean, honestly, and you could keep saying, you're going to respect the process. The Texans also in this story popped up a couple of times. Yeah. What like that now opens up a completely different avenue of questioning right now, Albert. I know you don't have the answers, and I know the league doesn't appear to have them either, that they want more answers before acting. But isn't that what the commissioner's exempt list is there for? That we place someone aside, they're still paid, and we're just going to, we're going to remove this player from the public forum and the ability to ply a craft while we figure out what's what, right?
And Rich, they've used the commissioner's exempt list in that way in the past. I mean, they used it, I believe, in 2014 with Rice and Hardy and Peterson, right?
Yeah.
Like, they used it, and there was a shift in the way that they've handled discipline the last few years, and that was, really a result of the Ezekiel Elliott case and Jerry Jones basically convincing other owners, like, we don't want to be judge, jury, and executioner anymore. We should let the legal process sort of lead us by the hand. And so, as a result of that, the league's stance on this has been, well, so long as there aren't criminal charges, we aren't putting him on the exempt list. And I would say this, too. I think the Texans really sort of bailed the league out last year in that sense, right?
Right.
Because the Texans just said, okay, we're not going to put him on the field. And Deshaun Watson was okay with going on paid leave, or in effect paid leave. It wasn't paid leave, but it was in effect paid leave. And so, both Watson and the Texans sort of bailed the league out.
But that was also at a time where we didn't know the details of what was going on. We just assumed it's because Watson insisted he would never play for them again, and why would they have that player out there on the field and run the risk of him getting hurt?
Yeah.
That was the backdrop of what we thought at the time was all of that.
But Rich, at the doorstep of training camp, you'll remember last year there was that question: is the league going to put him on the exempt list? And the narrative coming out of 345 Park was pretty consistently, unless there are criminal charges, we won't do that. And then the commissioner actually came out and flat out said that in March. And so what I know about the commissioner's exempt list is Roger has great discretion, like a high level of discretion on this, right? The narrative about the criminal charges, that's not really required. He can put Deshaun Watson on the commissioner's exempt list as he sees fit. And I'm with you. If they don't feel ready to suspend him, I sort of feel like this is what the commissioner's exempt list is there for, at least in the form that they've started to use it, really going back to that, September when the Ray Rice and Greg Hardy and Adrian Peterson cases happened all at once. It's, to take a guy off the field when it reflects poorly on the league what's going on. And so, I mean, I think next week's going to be interesting. Whether or not the Browns put Deshaun Watson out there is going to be interesting, in front of the media. And at this point, after, not making him available for the entire off season and sort of making Kevin Stefanski answer all the questions for everybody on this, I think it's very fair to question the Browns if they don't put Deshaun Watson out there. And I don't remember what the PFWA rules are about that, but I don't think they have to make him available. But, I think I think the optics are really horrible if they're hiding Deshaun Watson. Even if all they can do is put him out there and he just has to answer every question. I can't answer that because of the legal situation going on. I think the optics of not putting him out there and having him, face the music are not good for the organization.
Albert, thanks for the time. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. I apologize for the phone call.
It's all good. That's Albert Breer here. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.